Hello and welcome to the Albright Scholar for March 2022. My name is John Pankratz. I teach at Albright, and every month it's my privilege to welcome BCTV viewers and residents of Greater Reading to take a glimpse inside our learning community up on North 13th Street, to look at the work being done by students and teachers, and to think about its impact on all of us. Well, it is March. The snow is beginning to melt, and Albright is on spring break. Well, some people, such as my colleague David Tanner in the Center for the Arts, are off in Florida, as is the baseball team and the lacrosse team. I'm here catching up with my grading, and I'm also catching up with some of the fascinating ACRE projects, Albright Creative Research Experience projects that students did during our January term. Back in January, I talked with two political scientists who were working in Prague, in the Czech Republic. And today I want to talk with Abby Platero and one of her mentors, Kate Mishricki, about a fascinating project in the Friedman Gallery. Abby and Kate, welcome to the Albright Scholar. Great to see you.
Thank you for having us.
So for those of you who don't know, the Friedman Gallery has, for more than 40 years, been a very distinguished institution at Albright and in the Greater Reading community. It is a contemporary art gallery, not really a museum, a gallery that shows cutting edge work by mostly living artists from North America, I guess we'll say, because it's included some Canadians and Mexicans over the time. As well. But it's a wonderful institution. It's free, it's visitable 5 days a week, and it really has been an incredible source of aesthetic and intellectual stimulation. But it's not a museum, but it has a collection. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do you manage a collection that you don't really want to have, and how do you perhaps distribute pieces in other ways if you don't have storage space. The technical term is deaccessioning. Abby, how in the world did you become interested in the problem of deaccessioning?
It was actually really funny because I had always wanted to do an acre. I just never knew what I wanted to do it in. And I was approached by Professor Tanner, and he was like, hey, I have this project. It's kind of boring, but you're more than welcome to kind of tackle it and see how you do with it. And so when he first explained like, oh, I just need you to kind of collect like artist data and then we'll go from there, I was like, okay, sure. But I think as you kind of start immersing yourself in this world, you realize just how many layers there are. And so what started as a tiny project kind of really started to like bloom and blossom into this super invasive thing where you have to go into collections and then you have to do more than just research, which has been really fun to be able to kind of like work with Kate on more of like the tangible side and then work with David on more of like the legal side and more of the research side. And then for myself, just being able to talk with the different artists and the different people that represent them and go into all of these different, fields and aspects that you didn't think you would even need to go into. So that's been pretty interesting for the most part, but it's also been like a lot of fun being able to kind of dig deeper.
How great. I think that really is a model statement about what research in academia is about. Take something that might on the surface seem like it's going to be boring, and then as you come to work hard and learn more, it blossoms into something really fascinating. Kate, you've been doing a lot of this work. You are the registrar of the Friedman Gallery, which means you keep track of the comings and goings of temporary shows, but also the works of art that we have back there in the storeroom or off in faculty or staff offices and that sort of thing. You're also a practicing artist, and so you've got both sides of the art world down pat. What exactly does a registrar do? We'll give our audience a sense of that.
Sure. So a museum registrar is very similar to a museum collections manager or an archivist. All three of those kind of overlaps sometimes. Sometimes you'll have just a registrar separate from a collections manager. Sometimes it'll be the same position. The registrar is the person who's kind of in charge of, like you said, the database of the collection. So I know where our collection is. I know it's the condition it's in. I do all of the kind of data that is associated with our collection. I also do, like you said, the temporary comings and goings. So I'm in charge of loan agreements to get insurance on anything that's coming in. I'm also in charge of doing what's called condition reporting. So when work comes into the gallery, I have to examine it very thoroughly. And I have to, Abby helped with one of our shows last semester, so she knows about this. You have to kind of go over it with a fine tooth comb and find any imperfection, write it down, document it, so that when it leaves, you know exactly how it came and how it went. And that's what you do with like the temporary shows, really, is a lot of condition reporting and loan agreement work and stuff like that. But then with the actual collection, I'm responsible for like when it moves from a certain place to another place. I have to keep track of where it is physically. I also have to care for it and make sure it stays in good shape. So the way that it is stored and the means of storing is something I'm also in charge of. So stuff like that. Also campus loan, which our school has. Most academic museums have a campus loan program. So we have artwork that we allow to be loaned to faculty and some staff members. So I'm in charge of kind of getting those contracts and then getting everything ready to be taken and hung, and then pull it back when it's time to come back and keep track of what's out and what's coming in and how long it's been out and all that stuff.
Yeah, it really makes a difference to the Albright campus. I was just visiting alumni relations the other day, and I noticed they have a number of works that I hadn't seen there before, hanging in offices and hanging in the hallway, and it really makes it a warm and inviting and intriguing place. I saw a couple pieces I liked a lot. Now, Abby, are you an artist as well? You're an arts management major, is that right?
Yeah, I'm arts administration. I actually, what kind of got me into arts administration was I took a college level studio class in high school, and I hated every moment of it because it was incredibly, what do you call it, jarring, because it's just like you had to like produce piece after piece after piece. And I was like, this is all fun and great and dandy. But I don't think I meant to be the artist, but I realized how much I loved working with creative people and other artists and kind of elevating them and allowing them to tell their stories. So I absolutely love kind of partnering with them, but I knew from the get-go that I did not want to be the one on display and show my art. It was a little too much for me.
But it's true that artists themselves, creative people, are not always the best at managing or even presenting themselves, right? Sometimes artists like our own colleague, Kristen Woodward, are incredibly articulate about their process and the work that they produce. Brian as well. They can talk for ages about what they're doing. But I've seen other visual artists who can't really explain why they do what they do, and so they need support people. They need people around who can build that bridge between them and the public that they're trying to communicate with. Yeah. Well, what are some of the interesting problems with deaccessioning at a small institution like Albright, a small institution like the Friedman Gallery?
I would say definitely one of the main issues that we've come across is that there's not really a whole lot of, relevant literature on deaccessioning. So there's not really a lot of people that we can base our work off of. It's kind of more, we're taking it step by step and making sure that we're like, dotting all our I's, crossing all of our T's, and making sure that there's really nothing left behind. And Kate has been doing like a fantastic job of going back and double checking everything we do and making sure that we have provenance, or like proving that we have ownership of these pieces, which then leads us to the next step and then the next step. So I think definitely kind of working that process on our own and kind of like going in blind, but also trying to do it to the best of our ability has been challenging, but it also has been probably the most rewarding part, because I know from my standpoint, I feel like we're doing everything to the best of our ability. So it definitely feels like a very rewarding process because we're going about it in the best way that we possibly can.
And you're generating really data and information that will, in theory, be stored forever, that
Mhm.
will be part of the provenance of these pieces and the documentation of these pieces wherever they find themselves along the way.
Yeah.
Is that true that there's literally no book, Deaccessioning for Dummies or something that you can go out and read?
I mean, I have a couple of books that Dave and I have been reading where it's more just this is what they did wrong and this is why everyone was upset with them. And so kind of learning from their mistakes, like, okay, this is what we don't do. Great. Or just hearing like different people's critiques on it or how the general public reacted to it. But I don't really think that there has been a museum that has deaccessioned like 100% successfully without causing some sort of uproar or coming across some sort of problem that either, you know, stopped the process or what do you call it? Or I don't know, just generated some type of really negative backlash. So we definitely read through those and like we're learning through them, but I don't think there has been like a 100% documented case where they were like, we did it and we did it well.
Right.
So
And everybody was happy, right?
right, I don't think you can make anyone happy, but at least, you know, make the majority of people happy.
Right. I mean, I guess the idea of a museum is that it collects and it stores everything, right? You think of the Smithsonian as America's attic, and Albright really doesn't have an attic, and so we're not in a position to just store everything. And yet, people have given us gifts over the decades, and various objects, and three-dimensional and two-dimensional, and sort of said, oh, this is a wonderful gift I'm giving. I'm sure they'll want to hang on to this forever. And maybe we wish we could, but we can't. And so how do you, in an ethical way, dispose of those things? That is, sell them on to other purchasers. You can't just, you know, turn it into cash the next day after somebody gives you a gift, right?
No, you can't do that. There is definitely a lot of legal issues when it comes to deaccessioning. Like you said, it's a gift, it's been given with the idea that we are supposed to hang on to it forever. And you're not really supposed to accept art that you can't do that for. Unfortunately, the Friedman Gallery was never meant to be a collecting institution. It was, like you said earlier, it's a gallery, it's contemporary art. But prior to David, we had a lot of directors who really loved these gifts because it was valuable. They were valuable gifts, and they do give us something. But we just don't have the storage for long-term storage facilities for these things. So we did the best we could, but there are guidelines for how and what you can do with things, but you have to have a really good reason. And like the biggest reason is it doesn't fit your mission. So
Right.
if it doesn't fit our mission, then that is a good reason to get rid of something. And that's like I don't say like legal, but you won't be looked at as like, oh no, no, no. And the other reason is the thing we've been doing is duplicates. If you have like 3 and 4 and 5 of the same print, that just is redundant, and there's really no need to keep that many of them, especially in our case when we've been given 4 and 5 copies by the same donor. So a lot of what we were given was by one donor. So that actually for us, I would say at least what we're doing now makes it less worrisome. As we move into other areas of the collection, we need to work on deaccessioning. There will be problems, I can already tell you. We have some Russian art that doesn't fit our mission because it's Russian and we are North American, but that might be a little bit more tricky than deaccessioning duplicates of one donor. That's going to be a lot. That's why we're starting there. We're starting there because that's going to be the easy one, and we're going to work our way up to the harder things.
Let me actually share my screen if I can, because I took a picture of the two of you working in the storeroom of the Friedman Gallery. I hope we can see that. And it's just what you said. Here are 3 different prints. I don't know whether they're lithographs or silk screens, but they're the same thing, reproductions. And yet there are, I guess you're trying to draw distinctions. We don't want to keep all 3. So what are you discussing here as you examine these pieces.
Go ahead,
Um,
Abby.
yeah, I was gonna say this was definitely a fun process, especially when David, Kate, and I kind of laid everything out, and we would go and look at all of the duplicates. So we were looking to see like which one looked the best, which one had the best kind of color payoff, if any of them had maybe the color had dulled over time, being left out in the sun or being left out for too long. Looking at the quality of the paper, was there any tears, any rips? Um, had it been kind of like hung in maybe a way that what do you call it, maybe a way that damaged it, were there any type of watermarks? Sometimes what happens with pieces like this, if they aren't put on acid-free paper, it kind of transfers a bit, and then so you can clearly see it through the back. So then we would kind of categorize that as damage. So looking at the quality of each print and then seeing which one looks the best and which one looked the best is what we would keep. The second best is what we would leave for what we called a campus loan. So if someone was like, oh, we would really like to have this piece in our gallery, or we would really like to have this piece on display, then that would be the piece that we would send off. And then the third one would be the one that we would recommend for deaccessioning.
I see. Great, great. While I have the screen shared, let me show you with David here, our colleague, David Tanner, who is director of the Center for the Arts at Albright and a professor of arts administration. And he was your other faculty mentor on this acre project. All right. Abby, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the legal constraints or legal problems that a deaccessioner has to take into account?
Right. So right now we are very much in the recommendation stage. So we can't 100% say like, oh, this needs to go. We don't really have jurisdiction over that. So what we are essentially doing is building our case to present to the board and the Visual Arts Committee. That way they can approve of it, and then we can then go on and do the actual physical deaccessioning of it.
Okay.
But as of right now, we're just looking at the duplicates, making the recommendations of the pieces, making sure that we have ownership of them, looking at that ownership, seeing if the person who donated it had specific wishes for it. Because sometimes they may say like, oh, feel free to do what you want with it. We just gave it to you. Or they may have very strict conditions like you must keep it for 10 years. And then after that, you have to go through this person and so on and so forth. So kind of looking at those different stipulations. On the artist research side, it's been a lot of kind of digging through a lot of Facebook profiles, a lot of artist websites. Sometimes I've come into contact with their children because maybe they have passed. And they're always like very, I don't want to say concerned, but they're always taken aback when they're like, oh, someone's asking about my father. Like, that's interesting. So it's been definitely interesting having those types of conversations with people. I've talked to people abroad in Italy, some in France. Some have even asked me to do additional research for them. I remember one artist was like, oh, I have this one piece in this one gallery. Can you do some research and see if the gallery is still up? So then I did that additional research for them. So it's been a very like well-rounded, full encompassing process for sure.
So it's been a lot of human contact as well as time spent in the archives with paper and paint and ink and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
Is Leonid Sokov still alive? He's one of the creators of amazing Russian art. I remember when it was first given to Albright and first shown here on campus.
I'm not 100% certain.
I'm not sure. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I haven't gotten to the S section of our collection. I'm going alphabetically, and we're about smack dab in the middle of the alphabet.
Great, great. Have you run into any sort of memorable cases in terms of, I don't know, pieces that we wish we could keep, but maybe we won't, or particular works that you really loved?
I don't think if we've come into anything that we were like, oh, we really want to keep this, mainly because we're just working with duplicates. So we're keeping at least some form of it anyway. But I will say definitely on the artist research side, probably the first artist that I researched, I remember that I could find absolutely nothing on this artist. And I was like, something's bothering me about this because I feel like there's more. And it wasn't until like weeks and weeks after like going back and forth between looking and not looking that I was actually able to find a lot about the artist. It just happened to be written in, um, I forget what language, but it was a completely different language. And as soon as I put it in that language, like everything started popping up. I found his niece and then an article that his niece wrote about him. And I was able to find like his birthplace and his actual name and his other relatives. And I was like, there it is. There's the aha moment.
No, that and exactly right. An aha moment when everything sort of comes together and begins to make sense. Um, I think our audience may have some inkling of why keeping this very, very careful track of artistic pieces matters. It really influences the value of a work of art. If you can demonstrate that provenance and show that the provenance from artist to its first owner to its subsequent owners to you is a clear historical record. Kate, that's right.
Yes, actually, it's really interesting. I was just at the Michener Museum on Sunday, so yesterday,
Yes.
and they had a few exhibitions. They had a Keith Haring one, which was why we were there. But my surprise when I walked there and they had an exhibition about museum collections, like about the art of collecting. And I thought, what is this going to be about? Like, how are they making this into an exhibition? And it was really cool. So they would have a painting or a print or a sculpture out, and then they had like next to it some kind of sign with like, I don't want to call it a graph, but it was like a map. So it'd have
Mhm.
a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a key that would say one. This painting was painted in 1965 by so and so. Number two, it was sold to. They had the provenance, the entire trail, and they did that for a whole room's worth of their collection. I thought that is really cool because I don't think your average museum goer even ever considers that that is an entire field of museum work where you have to kind of follow that piece and know where it's from. And this is one of those things that a little bit of media coverage was on back in the day when they did a movie about it with what's his name, Ryan Reynolds. Remember that
Yes.
movie? It was about that Klimt piece that had gotten stolen during World War II from
From
a
a Jewish
family by the
family.
Nazis.
Mhm.
Yep. And so this is why provenance is actually so important when it comes to uh, um, any type of use, but specifically when you go to get rid of something. If you get rid of something and you never owned it, that can cause real problem. So yeah, so I thought the Michener did a really interesting show on that, where they did show like it was sold to this person, then it went over to that person, then that person died and left it to this person, and it was I've never seen an exhibit like that, kind of demonstrating provenance in that way, and I thought that was really really well done. So I was like, actually, I was thinking like we should do something like that. But then I realized that our provenance on most of our stuff is like Alex Rosenberg gave it to
Alex
us,
Rosenberg.
and
Thank you,
that's
Alex.
it. That is that is the extent of the provenance. Alex Rosenberg printed it and gave it to us.
No.
So for most of what we are DSSing right now, most of it comes from Alex Rosenberg, who is a very generous donor
Mhm.
and alumnus of Albright. So really the provenance is not hard on these ones because really it was mostly him or through him. So we had a few other people, but it was through him. So provenance won't be too hard on those things. Unfortunately, it would not make for a good exhibition. One,
Right.
and that's it.
Big picture of Alex. Yeah. But in the 200 years from now, when people are still looking at these, your careful, painstaking, accurate, and honest work is going to
Yes.
really be appreciated because we'll know those first steps in that long flow chart.
Yeah, we'll be step like 2. We'll be like number 2 on that chart. I'm
There we go.
excited for it.
There we go. Now, Abby, is this the acre, of course, was for the month of January, but have you continued on with this project as a work study or as a volunteer or?
Yeah, so I started this project actually in the summer of last year.
Okay.
We started it as an acre, and then I continued it as an internship through the fall, and then we continued it in interim, And then now I've been working on it on and off, mainly because the semester has really picked up. So it's been hard to kind of carve out that time. But we're like actively working on it little by little. And then I decided to turn it into my honors thesis.
Great.
So yeah, I'm planning on doing a case study of what we're doing with the Friedman Gallery, kind of like a start to finish, because this has been a process that was, started 10 years ago with David and is now finally coming to some sort of fruition where we're like physically getting somewhere. And it's kind of going by faster than we anticipated. So that's incredibly exciting. So I just kind of wanted to do something to encapsulate all of that and then maybe, stand as a piece of literature. Like, we kind of got it right, guys.
Right. And I think that will be a real contribution to the field for other institutions, maybe at similar schools to Albright. Oh, how do you do this? And what does it mean to students? This might put you in really good stead for future employment, right? Are you hoping to be working in the museum field forever?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent my time in nonprofits a lot ever since coming to college. And I've just found that, you meet some of the best people in nonprofits because they're there doing the work because they genuinely love either the art or the people or the mission or the organization. So you are just constantly met with endless amounts of passion. Like with Kate, you can clearly tell that she has an affinity and a love and a passion for what she does. And that just translates into me because I'm so excited to learn from her because she's so excited to teach me. So I think it's just like the atmosphere is definitely a plus, but I'm just very much in love with working with creative people and, empowering different voices and hearing different stories and letting people, intake different types of information and stories. So yeah.
That sounds perfect. I think passion ought to be people's motivation. I know sometimes we like to make money and sometimes we need to make money, but there are other moments where the love and the interest and the excitement keep us going day by day. We're just about at the end of our time here, so I want to thank you both for joining us on the Albright Scholar and wish you continued good luck as you expand the acreage of your acre. And thank you, Kate, as well, for being such a wonderful mentor to Abby and other students that you've worked with over these recent years. It's been a real gift to the college.
Thank you so much. I will say, I got lucky when I was in graduate school for museum studies. I had an amazing mentor, and I think that her enthusiasm kind of made me want to work with students because she worked in a college museum. And I think, Abby, you may end up one day being the mentor to somebody else and just passing on your love of what you're doing. So it's just gonna keep going.
I think the provenance of enthusiasm is clear. How wonderful. Thank you both. And thank you for watching on the Albright Scholar. We'll see you in the month of April with another edition.